A carriage crashes on a dark, stormy night, bringing two worlds into collision. Arthur, the Duke of Ashworth, is a man frozen by a bitter betrayal, a man who has sworn to never love again. His nemesis, Lord Vance, is a ruthless aristocrat who takes what he wants, and trapped between them is Clara Pemberton, a woman with a dangerous secret, found in the wreckage of Vance's own carriage. Ashworth offers her shelter, believing her to be his enemy's pawn. He intends to cast her out at dawn. But the truth of her identity and the desperate danger she's fleeing will threaten to shatter his ironclad vow or cost them both everything. Rain fell in punishing sheets, turning the county line of Derbyshire into a treacherous landscape of mud and water. From the tall, rain-lashed windows of Ashworth Manor, the world was a grey blur, a perfect reflection of the mood of its master. Arthur St. John, the 6th Duke of Ashworth, despised this kind of weather. It reminded him of vulnerability, of things outside his formidable control. He stood in his study, a formidable room of dark mahogany and leather-bound books, nursing a glass of brandy he didn't want. He was a tall man, with a severe face that might have been handsome had it not been carved into a mask of permanent cynicism. 8 years. It had been 8 years since his disastrous, humiliating marriage to Beatrice, and the subsequent vow he'd made over her fresh grave. He would never love again. Duty, yes. Legacy, perhaps. But love? Love was a sickness, a weakness his enemies could exploit. And he had one enemy in particular. A sharp crack of lightning illuminated the grounds, followed by a rumble of thunder that shook the very foundations of the manor. Arthur's prize stallion, kept in the stables, neighed in protest. He was about to turn from the window when a flicker of movement at the edge of his estate, near the old stone bridge that marked the border with the Rutherford lands, caught his eye. It was a carriage lamp, swinging wildly. Then, a sickening sound, the splintering of wood and the scream of a horse, carried faintly on the wind. "Damn it all," Arthur muttered. He had no love for his neighbour. Harrison Vance, the Marquess of Rutherford, was a snake. Their families had been feuding for a century, but the enmity between Arthur and Vance was personal, rooted in Beatrice's treachery. Still, duty was duty. A wreck was a wreck. He tugged the bell-pull for his butler. "My cloak and my horse. There's been an accident at the bridge." He rode through the deluge, the wind tearing at his cloak. He found the scene just as he'd expected. A dark green carriage, emblazoned with the Rutherford crest, a gaudy, leaping wolf, was tipped on its side, one of its wheels shattered in a deep rut. The horses were panicked, but the driver was nowhere to be seen. "Hello!" Arthur bellowed over the storm. Only a faint moan answered from inside the carriage. With a grimace of distaste, Arthur dismounted and wrenched the damaged door open. He was expecting to find one of Vance's drunken friends, or perhaps one of his paramours. Instead, he found a lone woman, slumped on the rain-soaked velvet. She was young, perhaps 20 or 21. Her travelling dress was of good quality, but simple, now soaked and torn. Her dark brown hair had come free from its pins. She was unconscious, a nasty gash bleeding on her temple. He felt an unwelcome lurch of something. Not pity, he told himself, just responsibility. He checked her pulse. It was steady. With a sigh that was more frustration than fatigue, he carefully gathered her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, and even in her unconscious state, she smelled faintly of lavender and soap, not the heavy perfumes his late wife had favoured. He mounted his horse, settling her in front of him. "You," he growled, "to the universe as much as to the woman, are an inconvenience." He rode back to Ashworth Manor, the unknown woman from his enemy's carriage, a dead weight against his chest, her head resting just below the heart he had sworn was made of stone. His housekeeper, Mrs. Davies, met him at the door, her eyes wide with shock. "Your Grace!" "Who?" "A survivor from a wreck on the Rutherford Road," Arthur said curtly, brushing past her. "She bears their crest. Have the green guest chamber prepared. Send for Dr. Hemlock." "Rutherford, my lord?" Mrs. Davies whispered, her disapproval clear. "Just see to her," Arthur commanded. "She is a problem. One I shall deal with in the morning." He deposited the woman on a chaise in the foyer, suddenly desperate to wash his hands, to rid himself of the feel of her. He had brought his enemy's property into his home, and as he looked down at her pale, still face, a cold premonition settled over him. This was no simple inconvenience. This was the beginning of something terrible. Clara Pemberton woke to the unfamiliar sensation of soft linen and the scent of wood smoke. Her head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache. She tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness forced her back down. She was not in the carriage. She was not on the road. Her eyes snapped open. She was in a vast, opulent bedroom, the likes of which she had only seen in illustrations. A fire crackled in a massive stone fireplace. The furniture was dark, heavy, and undeniably masculine. "Where am I?" she whispered. "You are at Ashworth Manor." The voice came from the doorway. It was deep, cold, and held no trace of welcome. Clara turned her head, wincing at the pain. The man standing there was tall and imposing, dressed in a severe black waistcoat and jacket that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. His face was all sharp angles and shadows, dominated by dark, assessing eyes. He looked, Clara thought with a tremor of fear, like a judge about to pass sentence. "Ashworth," she repeated, confusion clearing the fog from her mind. "But no, I was the Rutherford carriage." "Indeed," the Duke of Ashworth said, stepping into the room, "which is precisely the problem. I am Arthur St. John, Duke of Ashworth, and you were found alone in my enemy's overturned carriage on my land. I suggest you begin explaining." Clara struggled to sit up, pulling the thick counterpane to her chin. "My name is Clara Pemberton. I was a companion to Lady Agatha Rutherford, Lord Vance's aunt." Arthur raised a sceptical eyebrow. "Was? A companion? Your dress is simple, but your speech is educated. And companions do not typically abandon their posts by fleeing in the middle of a tempest." Clara flinched. I was on an errand. For Lady Agatha. To retrieve a package from the village." "In this storm?" Arthur crossed his arms. "An errand that took you away from Rutherford Hall, yet in a carriage bearing its crest. And where was the driver?" "He was gone by the time I arrived." "He fled," Clara said, her voice small. "The horses bolted in the storm. The carriage it tipped. The driver, Mr. Hobbs, he just ran." It was a weak lie, and she knew it. The truth was far more complicated and far more dangerous. "How convenient," the Duke said, his voice laced with ice. "You must think me a fool, Miss Pemberton. I know Harrison Vance. The women he associates with are of a particular type, and they are not companions." Clara's face flushed with anger, a sudden heat that burned through her fear. "I am not one of Lord Vance's women, Your Grace. I am Lady Agatha's companion. I assure you, my association with that family is purely professional, and, I had hoped, temporary." Her spirit, the flash of defiance in her green eyes, gave Arthur a momentary pause. It was unexpected. Beatrice had been all shallow charm and cunning. This woman was like flint. "Very well," he said, his tone unchanged. "We shall see. I have sent a message to Rutherford Hall, informing Lord Vance that I have detained one of his guests. I expect his arrival this morning to claim his property." Clara's blood ran cold. "No, you can't. He isn't there." "Oh?" Arthur's suspicion returned, threefold. "And how would you know that?" "Because he was expected in London," she stammered. "He won't come for me." "He will come," Arthur said with grim certainty. "He would not pass up an opportunity to set foot in my home, even if it is to retrieve a stray companion." A frantic terror seized Clara. She couldn't be here when Vance arrived. He would drag her back. He would force her. She swung her legs out of the bed, the world tilting dangerously. "I must leave. Now. If you would just be so kind as to point me to the road." She stood, but her legs gave way. Arthur moved with a speed that belied his size, catching her before she hit the floor. His arms were like steel bands around her. Clara was suddenly, intensely aware of his proximity, the clean scent of his shaving soap, the hard muscle of his chest, the sheer, imposing power of him. "You will go nowhere," he said, his voice a low growl near her ear. He deposited her back on the bed as if she weighed nothing. Just then, the door opened, and Mrs. Davies entered, followed by Arthur's butler, Jennings. "Your Grace," Jennings said, his face impassive. "A reply has arrived from Rutherford Hall." "Already?" Arthur said, surprised. "Vance must be eager." "It is not from Lord Vance, Your Grace," Jennings said, holding a silver tray. "It is from his solicitor. It seems your message was ill-timed. Lord Vance is indeed in London. He has been for a week. And there is other news." Arthur took the letter. He broke the black wax seal. As he read, his expression, already hard, turned to granite. "Well," he said, his voice flat and devoid of all emotion, "this complicates matters." "What?" Clara whispered, her hands clutching the blankets. "What is it?" The Duke fixed her with his cold, dark eyes. "It seems, Miss Pemberton, that you are a liar on multiple counts. According to this, your employer, Lady Agatha Rutherford, died 2 days ago." The words hit Clara like a physical blow. "Dead? No, she can't be. She was frail, but she was not." "He's lying." "The solicitor seems quite certain," Arthur stated, tapping the letter. "A sudden inflammation of the lungs. The funeral is scheduled for tomorrow." He watched her, every line of his body radiating suspicion. "Which means your errand was a flight. You were not running for her. You were running from them. What did you do, Miss Pemberton? Steal the family silver?" Clara's grief, sharp and sudden, erupted into fury. "How dare you?" she cried, scrambling to her feet, her previous dizziness forgotten. "Lady Agatha was the only kind person in that house. She was my friend." "A friend you were abandoning." "I was not abandoning her. I was trying to save us both." The raw, unfiltered emotion in her voice was undeniable. It was not the manufactured hysterics Arthur remembered from his late wife. This was real. He said nothing, merely waited, his silence a more effective interrogation than any question. Clara's shoulders slumped, and the fight went out of her. She sank onto a small chair by the window. "You don't understand," she whispered. "You have no idea what that man is." "Vance," Arthur said. The name was a curse on his tongue. "Enlighten me." And so, the story spilled out. Clara told him how she, the orphaned daughter of a poor vicar, had taken the position as companion to the elderly, reclusive Lady Agatha. She spoke of the woman's kindness, but also of her deep, abiding fear of her nephew, Lord Vance. "He has been bleeding her estate dry for years," Clara explained, her voice low. "His gambling debts are famous, I'm told. He would come to Rutherford Hall and terrorize her, demanding money. She was his prisoner." "A common story," Arthur said dismissively. "But it's not," Clara insisted, looking up, her eyes pleading. 2 months ago, Lady Agatha grew strong. She had me fetch her solicitor, Mr. Dryden from London, without telling Lord Vance. She changed her will. Arthur stilled. Changed it how? She left the bulk of her personal fortune, her properties, her investments, everything not entailed to the Rutherford title, to me. Arthur stared at her. The audacity of it, the sheer, terrifying stupidity of it. To you? A penniless companion? She said I was the daughter she never had, Clara said, tears welling. She said she wanted me to be free, to be safe from men like her nephew. She didn't know what she had done. No, Arthur agreed, a cold understanding dawning. She signed your death warrant. Vance found out. A servant. Someone told him. He came back from London in a rage. He locked Lady Agatha in her rooms. He came to me. He was charming at first. He said we could be partners. He said a woman like me couldn't possibly manage such a fortune. He offered to marry me. The room grew very cold. I see, Arthur said. When I refused, he changed. He said he would have me committed to an asylum. He said he would prove I had coerced his aunt. He said he would ruin me. I knew I had to get Lady Agatha's new will to Mr. Dryden in London. That was the errand. I was fleeing to the solicitor. And Lady Agatha? I don't know, Clara choked out, the tears finally falling. He said she was ill. He wouldn't let me see her. Oh God, do you think he... He killed her, Arthur finished, the words hanging like lead in the air. Or, more likely, let her die. A convenient inflammation of the lungs. He put me in that carriage, Clara whispered, shivering. He told me he was sending me to London. But the driver, he took the old county road, towards the moors. Not towards the station. I knew he was taking me somewhere to be disposed of. I fought him. I grabbed the door latch. I think I startled the horses. It all happened so fast. The crash, I thought I was dead. And then you were there. Silence descended. Arthur walked to the window, staring out at the abating storm. His entire world, his rigid, controlled, predictable world, had been upended. This woman was not his enemy's mistress. She was his enemy's victim. She was, quite possibly, the most endangered woman in England. And he, the man who had vowed to feel nothing, had just been handed the sole responsibility for her life. He turned back to her. She looked small, pale, and utterly broken. He felt a sharp, unfamiliar emotion, a fierce, protective rage that had nothing to do with duty and everything to do with the man who had caused this. You are in more danger than you can possibly imagine, Miss Pemberton, Arthur said, his voice softer, though still grim. Vance will not stop. Now that his aunt is dead, you are the only thing standing between him and a fortune. He will find you. Then I must run, Clara said, pulling herself together with a visible effort. I must get to London, to Mr. Dryden. You will not last a day, Arthur stated. Vance will have men watching every road, every coach. You have no money, no protection. You are a lone woman. He will have you declared mad and locked in Bedlam before the week is out, and no one will ever hear from you again. Then what am I to do? She cried, her voice cracking with despair. There is no one. I have no one. Arthur looked at her, at the raw terror in her eyes. He thought of his vow. He thought of the hatred he bore for Harrison Vance. He thought of the scandal. And then he made a decision, a reckless, foolish, and utterly necessary decision. You are wrong, Miss Pemberton, the Duke of Ashworth said, his voice echoing in the grand room. You have no one, but as of this moment, you have me. The declaration hung in the air, astonishing Clara and, if he was honest, Arthur himself. Granting sanctuary to the woman his enemy was hunting was a declaration of war. It was messy, emotional, and dangerous, everything he had spent the last 8 years avoiding. "Your Grace," Clara whispered, "I cannot ask you to." "You are not asking," Arthur interrupted. "I am offering, or more accurately, informing you of the situation. You will remain at Ashworth Manor. You will be my guest. But Lord Vance, he will know I am here. You sent him a message." "I sent a message that his guest was here. He will assume, well, he will assume exactly what I intended him to assume," Arthur said with a cold smile. "That I had captured his mistress. He will not, however, know your true identity or your purpose. Not yet. We will use his arrogance against him." For the next few days, Ashworth Manor became a gilded prison. Clara was given a suite of rooms. Mrs. Davies, under the Duke's strict orders, treated her with a frosty, reluctant respect. Arthur, for his part, was a confusing mixture of cold host and fierce protector. He would spend hours locked in his study, firing off letters to his own solicitors in London, men with more power and discretion than a country lawyer like Dryden. He was, as he put it, ascertaining the terrain. But they were also thrown together. They dined in silence in the cavernous dining hall, the table stretching between them like a battlefield. Yet he noticed things about her. She ate with a delicate precision, but she did not pick at her food. She was not a coy, simpering woman. She met his gaze directly when she spoke, and she was not afraid to disagree with him. On the 3rd day, the sun finally broke through. Clara, desperate for air, was walking in the formal gardens when Arthur found her. "You should not be out here," he said, his voice making her jump. "You could be seen from the road." "I am not a child to be hidden, Your Grace," Clara retorted, her nerves frayed. "I am a prisoner, in a very beautiful, very cold cage." "A cage that is keeping you alive," he countered. "And for how long?" she asked, turning to face him. "How long until Lord Vance comes? He must know by now who you have. He knows his aunt is dead. He will put 2 and 2 together." "He will," Arthur agreed, "which is why my solicitors are already moving. But he will not dare touch you here. Not on my land. You are very confident in your power, Duke. I am confident in the power of my walls, my staff, and my reputation," he said. He gestured to a stone bench. One of the few advantages of being known as a heartless recluse is that people tend to believe you are capable of anything. Vance thinks I am keeping you as a new toy, a way to spite him. Let him. Clara sat, and after a moment, he sat on the other end of the bench. The distance was proper, but the shared space felt charged. "Why do you hate him so much?" she asked quietly. Arthur's face darkened. "Our families have been at odds for generations. Land disputes, political slights." "No," Clara said, shaking her head. "It is more than that. When you say his name, it's personal. It's the same way he speaks of you." Arthur looked away, his jaw tightening. "My late wife Beatrice knew Vance, before we were married." "Knew him?" "She had an affair," Arthur said, the words blunt and brutal. "With him. A month into our marriage. It was the talk of London. She humiliated me. She was a cruel, a selfish woman, and he encouraged it. He revelled in it." Clara was silent. "I am so sorry, Your Grace." "Do not be," Arthur said harshly. "Pity is the last thing I want. I learned a valuable lesson. Never trust. Never love. It is a vow that has served me well." "Until now," Clara whispered. He looked at her. The sunlight caught the auburn highlights in her hair. She was not beautiful in the way Beatrice had been, all flash and dazzle. Clara's was a beauty of intelligence, of strength, of a quiet, unshakable integrity. He looked at her, and for the first time in 8 years he felt the ice around his heart crack. It terrified him. "This is not that," he said, standing abruptly. "This is an alliance, a temporary, unwanted alliance. We have a common enemy. That is all." He started to walk away. "Arthur!" she called out, using his given name for the first time. He stopped, his back to her. "She was a fool," Clara said, her voice clear and strong. "Beatrice, she was a fool, and Lord Vance, he is a monster. But do not let them win. Do not let them turn you into a man of stone. That is not a victory. It is a surrender." He stood for a long moment, his shoulders rigid. Then, without a word, he walked on, leaving her alone in the garden. That evening, a rider galloped up the drive of Ashworth Manor, bearing the Rutherford crest. He did not ask for Miss Pemberton. He carried an invitation. Lord Vance, having returned from London to mourn his dearly departed aunt, requested the Duke of Ashworth's presence at Rutherford Hall. And the note added, "Do bring your new, charming guest. I am so very eager to make her acquaintance." The war had come to them. "He knows," Clara breathed, the invitation trembling in her hand. "He's not even pretending. He's toying with us." "He is arrogant," Arthur corrected, pacing his study. The letter from Vance was a masterpiece of veiled threats. "He thinks to call my bluff. He wants to see me parade you at his home, to see if I will truly claim you. He wants to see you, to gauge your fear, to remind you that he can reach you even here." "Then we cannot go," Clara said, her voice resolute. "We must refuse." "And do what?" Arthur stopped pacing. "Bar the doors. He will come here. He will bring the local magistrate. He will claim you are a runaway, a thief. He will paint me as a kidnapper, a lecherous duke who has stolen a grieving man's charge. In the eyes of society, he is the bereaved nephew, and you are nothing. A companion. My word against his will mean nothing when my actions, harboring a young, unmarried woman, are so scandalous." "So what do we do?" Clara felt the walls of the cage closing in. "We are trapped." Arthur looked at her, his dark eyes intense. The mechanism of a plan was turning in his brilliant, cold mind. It was a terrible, desperate, and, he realized, the only solution. "He wants to play a game, Miss Pemberton," Arthur said, a slow, dangerous smile touching his lips. "Let us play." "What game?" "Your Grace, this is not—" "Tomorrow," Arthur said. "We will accept his invitation. But we will not go as duke and guest. We will go as something else. Something he cannot touch. Something that will destroy him." Clara watched him, bewildered. "I don't understand." Arthur walked to his desk. He took a piece of parchment and a pen. He did not write. He simply stood, looking at the blank paper. 8 years ago, he said, his voice low, I made a vow. I swore that no woman would ever again have a claim on my name, my title, or my heart. I have held to that vow. It has been my shield, my armor. He turned to face her. Lord Vance's greatest weapon against you is your vulnerability. You are a woman alone, unprotected, unclaimed. He can defame you, commit you, or worse, and the world will look the other way. Then, there is only one way, Arthur said, the words costing him more than she could know. There is only one protection I can offer you that is absolute, one that will give you the power to fight him, to claim your inheritance, and to walk away from this from me free and clear. He looked her directly in the eye, his own gaze unreadable. Miss Pemberton Clara, I am asking you to become my wife. Clara's mind went entirely blank. She could only stare, certain she had misheard. "Your wife? You are jesting." "I have not jested since 1802, Miss Pemberton. I am offering you a marriage of convenience, a business arrangement." He began to tick off the points, his voice becoming brisk, as if he were discussing a land purchase. "You will gain my name and my title. As the Duchess of Ashworth, you are untouchable. Vance cannot have you committed. He cannot slander you without slandering me. And my solicitors, acting on behalf of the Duchess, will have the standing to crush his claims on your inheritance." "And you?" she whispered. "What do you gain?" "I gain the satisfaction of destroying Harrison Vance," Arthur said, his voice dropping to a lethal calm. "I gain the pleasure of seeing his face when I walk into his home with you on my arm. Not as my guest, but as my Duchess. He sought to ruin me with a woman once. I will use a woman to ruin him. It's poetic." "A marriage?" Clara said, sinking into a chair. "You despise love. You barely tolerate me." "This has nothing to do with love," Arthur said, the words like a slap. "Do not mistake this. This is strategy. The arrangement would be simple. We marry, we destroy Vance, we secure your fortune. And then we live separate lives. You will be free, wealthy, and protected. You may live in London, on the continent, wherever you wish. All I ask is that you bear the name with discretion. In return, I will have my revenge." He was offering her the world, safety, wealth, freedom, everything she had ever dreamed of. But the price was him. A life tethered, however loosely, to this cold, wounded man. A life built on a lie. A strategy. She looked at his hard, handsome face. He was offering her a shield, but she saw in that moment that he was also offering his own. He was hiding behind this arrangement just as much as she would be. "And if I say no?" she asked. Arthur's expression did not change. "Then I will give you a horse, a purse full of gold, and point you toward London. You may make it. You may not. The choice is yours, Miss Pemberton. Servitude to a monster, a desperate flight into the unknown, or a convenient, passionless cage of gold." Clara stood. She walked to him, stopping just a foot away. He was so tall. He did not back away, but she saw a flicker in his eyes. He was not as in control as he appeared. "You are wrong, Your Grace," she said softly. "About what?" "You said you gain revenge, but you also gain a partner. You gain someone who knows, just as you do, what it is to be hunted by that man. You gain an ally. If I agree, I will not be a silent, demure duchess, hidden away. If we do this, we do it together. We are not just a strategy. We are a we. Can you agree to those terms?" He stared at her, seeing her for the first time. Not as a problem, not as a victim, not as a pawn, but as an equal. A long moment passed. "We," he repeated, tasting the word. "Yes, I can agree to that." "Then, Your Grace," Clara said, extending her hand not as a suitor, but as a signatory to a contract. "You have yourself a duchess." The wedding was a quiet, cold affair, performed by special license in the Duke's private chapel at Ashworth Manor. The only witnesses were a grim-faced Mrs. Davies and a visibly uncomfortable Jennings. Clara wore a simple gown of dove-grey silk, borrowed from Mrs. Davies. Arthur wore his standard, severe black. When he slid the heavy gold ring, his mother's, onto her finger, his hand was cold but steady. "I now pronounce you," the vicar intoned, "Duke and Duchess of Ashworth." Arthur did not kiss his new bride. He merely offered his arm, a formal, chilling gesture. "Your Grace," he said, and it was not clear if he was addressing her or himself. They walked back to the manor in silence. The wedding breakfast was a tense, quiet meal in the grand dining hall. Immediately after, Arthur retreated to his study. Clara, now the Duchess, was left alone in the drawing room, the new, heavy ring feeling like a manacle on her finger. This was her life. She was safe. She was powerful. She was utterly, completely alone. The charade was set for that evening. They were to attend the dinner at Rutherford Hall. A footman had been dispatched with their regretful refusal of the earlier invitation, and a new acceptance, announcing the Duke's joyful and sudden marriage. Clara could only imagine the rage that must be consuming Lord Vance. As the sun began to set, Clara was in her new rooms, a vast, lonely suite, being dressed by a maid. Arthur appeared at the door. He was dressed for the evening, and he looked magnificent, but his face was a mask of thunder. "Your Grace," the maid curtsied and fled. "Arthur, what is it?" "Is it Vance?" Arthur said, his voice a low, terrifying rasp. "He sent a wedding gift." In his hand he held a small, velvet-covered box. How could he have? "It was delivered by messenger a half-hour ago. Addressed to me." "What is it?" Clara asked, approaching him warily. With a jerky, violent motion, Arthur threw the box onto the dressing table. It sprang open. Inside, nestled on black velvet, was not a jewel, but a miniature portrait. A beautiful, blonde, laughing woman. "Beatrice," Clara whispered. "That," Arthur said, his voice shaking, "is not all." He pulled a letter from his waistcoat pocket. It was in the box. Clara took it. It was in Vance's handwriting. "My dearest Ashworth, congratulations. I hear you have taken another bride." How predictable. You always did have a taste for the damaged and the desperate. "I send you this little trinket, a reminder of your first spectacular failure. You always thought she came to me, didn't you? That I seduced her away from your cold, pious arms. You truly are a fool. Beatrice was mine from the beginning. Our families arranged her match with you. We needed your money, your influence. She was my agent, my collaborator. Every humiliation she visited upon you, every secret of your ledgers, every weakness she brought to me. We laughed about it. We laughed at you. She never loved you. She despised you. So congratulations on your new Duchess, a penniless nobody you found in my carriage. I wonder how long it will be before she, too, finds a way to cuckold you. Or perhaps she already has. You always pick the wrong women, Ashworth. I wonder how long until this one, too, realizes you are utterly impossible to love." Your neighbour, Rutherford Clara, looked up. Arthur had turned away, his shoulders rigid, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. He was trembling. Not with rage. With shame. "Arthur," she said, her voice soft. "It's true," he whispered, his voice broken, "all of it. She was I, he is right. I am impossible to love. A man of stone, as you said. The vow he had made, never to love again, was a lie. The truth was, he believed he couldn't be loved. His vow wasn't a shield. It was a prison he had built for himself, and Vance's letter was the final, turning key. Clara looked from the broken man at the window to the mocking, laughing face of Beatrice in the box. She thought of the cold, strategic proposal. She thought of the fear in his eyes when she had suggested they be a we. In that moment, she felt a surge of emotion so powerful it stole her breath. It was not pity. It was a fierce, burning rage. She walked to the dressing table. She picked up the miniature. "She was beautiful," Clara said. Arthur flinched. "Don't." "She was beautiful," Clara repeated, "and she was a vile, pathetic creature. And he," she said, picking up the letter, is a bitter, small man. She walked to the fireplace, where a low fire burned against the evening chill. Arthur, look at me. He slowly, agonizingly, turned. His eyes were hollow. He wants to destroy you, Clara said, her voice ringing with a strength he had never heard. He wants you to believe this. He wants you to believe that you are unlovable, because if you are, he wins. He wins not just the money, not just the feud. He wins you. He owns your very soul. She held the letter over the flame. This is a lie. This is the poison of a desperate, evil man. The paper browned, then caught, the ink turning to ash. And this, she said, holding up the portrait, is the past. She looked at the laughing face. She was a fool. You were her victim. You are not defined by your betrayers, Arthur. You are only defined by your refusal to heal. She tossed the miniature into the fire. The paint blistered, and the ivory cracked. Arthur stared, breathless, as the last visage of his first wife was consumed by the flames. He looked at Clara. She was standing tall, her face illuminated by the firelight, her eyes blazing with a loyalty and strength he had never known. She had not recoiled. She had not pitied him. She had defended him. She had chosen him. Clara, he breathed. He crossed the room in 2 strides. He took her face in his hands, his touch reverent, desperate. Why? He whispered. Why would you? Because, she said, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling the frantic beat of his heart. We are a we, remember. We are allies, and I will not let him win. His vow, his 8 years of ice and stone. It shattered, it dissolved, it meant nothing. He lowered his head and kissed her. It was not the chaste, cold kiss of a marriage of convenience. It was a kiss of desperation, of starvation, of 8 years of repressed loneliness and a sudden, terrifying hope. It was a kiss that said, I am broken. And she replied, so am I. Let's be broken together. When he finally pulled back, they were both shaking. Clara, he said again, his voice thick with an emotion he couldn't name. Arthur, she replied, a small, trembling smile on her face. I believe we have a dinner to attend. We should not keep Lord Vance waiting. After all, we have so much to celebrate. He looked at his wife, and for the first time, a genuine smile, a true, warm smile, touched the face of the Duke of Ashworth. Yes, he said. Yes, we do. The carriage ride to Rutherford Hall was shrouded in a heavy, tense silence. They sat opposite one another, the darkness of the coach a stark contrast to the brilliant, terrifying decision they had made. Clara, now the Duchess of Ashworth, felt her hands, clammy and cold, twisting in the lap of her borrowed gown. It was a stunning creation of deep emerald velvet, retrieved from a trunk belonging to Arthur's mother. It fit as if it were made for her, and the colour, Arthur had noted with a grim smile, was the colour of battle. You are trembling, Arthur observed, his voice a low rumble in the dark. I am afraid, Clara admitted, her voice barely a whisper. He is a monster, Arthur. We are walking into his lair, into a house where he is king. He was a king, Arthur corrected. His hand moved across the carriage, covering hers. His skin was warm, his grip firm and grounding. It was not a lover's caress, not yet, but it was a soldier's, a partner's. Tonight he is just a man who has made a very powerful enemy. 2 of them. Clara turned her hand in his, her fingers lacing with his. We are a we, she affirmed, her voice gaining strength. We are, he said. The carriage slowed, rounding the final bend. Rutherford Hall loomed against the twilight sky, a dark, imposing edifice. Unlike the solid, steadfast grandeur of Ashworth Manor, Rutherford Hall looked dissolute. It was overly ornate, with a sense of decay clinging to its edges. A footman, his face a mask of surprise upon seeing the Ashworth crest, hurried to open the door. Arthur stepped out first. He was a formidable sight, dressed in stark, immaculate black, his signet ring flashing in the torchlight. He turned and offered his hand to his wife. Clara took it. As she stepped down, a collective, audible gasp rippled through the other guests arriving. The doors to the hall had been thrown open, light spilling out, and the arrival of the Duke of Ashworth, a man who had not attended a social event in 8 years, was a shock. But the woman on his arm, that was the true spectacle. She was not a cowering, dishevelled creature. She was in the emerald velvet, with the Ashworth diamond sparkling at her throat, a last-minute addition from Arthur, who had retrieved them from his safe, stating, "My mother always said these were for a woman of true courage, a vision of power." Her chin was high, her gaze steady. She was radiant, not with joy, but with terrifying, unbreakable resolve. They walked up the steps, the whispers parting before them like the sea. Lord Vance was at the head of his receiving line, a smug, predatory smile fixed on his face. He had clearly been expecting a cowed Clara to be dragged in by a defensive Arthur. He had anticipated a social execution. When his eyes landed on them, his smile froze. The colour drained from his face, replaced by a sudden, mottled red of disbelief. Then rage. He had seen the carriage crest, but this was an impossibility. He visibly recoiled, his shock so profound that the mask of aristocratic disdain he usually wore shattered for one priceless second. He recovered, but not before Arthur and Clara had both seen it. The first blow was landed. "Ashworth," Vance sneered, his voice tight. He let his gaze slide to Clara, dismissing her with a look of pure contempt. "And, madam, what a delightful surprise. I had not heard the happy news of your new companion." The entire hall, filled with the assembled gentry of Derbyshire, went silent. A challenge had been issued. Arthur, in response, smiled. It was a slow, dangerous smile that did not reach his cold eyes. He took Clara's hand, the one bare of its glove, and lifted it to his lips. He kissed her knuckles, a deliberate, possessive, performative act of devotion. His eyes never left Vance's. "Rutherford," Arthur replied, his voice smooth as silk and carrying to every corner of the room. "Allow me to present my wife, Her Grace, the Duchess of Ashworth." The collective gasp was so sharp it was almost a scream. Vance's face was a study in apoplexy. "Your wife?" he choked out. "It was sudden," Arthur said, his hand sliding to Clara's back, a gesture of both protection and pride. "When one knows, one knows. I am sure you understand. After all, you were so insistent that I meet her. I truly cannot thank you enough, Rutherford. You have, quite unintentionally, brought me the greatest happiness of my life." The dinner was a masterclass in subtle, vicious warfare. They were seated, by some malicious design of Vance's, at the head table, with Vance himself between them. He had hoped to isolate Clara, to loom over her. Instead, he had trapped himself between two united, formidable foes. Every attempt to bait them failed. "Tell me, Ashworth," said Lord Barrows, a known toady of Vance's, from across the table. "Heard it was a sudden affair. Met on the road, I hear. How romantic. Or is it rustic?" Arthur merely sipped his wine. "The most important moments in life are often sudden, Barrows. I find long, drawn-out endeavours like your family's interminable search for an heiress seldom pay off." A ripple of nervous laughter went around the table. Vance, seething, finally turned his full, venomous attention on Clara. The room quieted, sensing the final brutal confrontation. "Tell me, Duchess," he purred, the title an insult on his tongue, his eyes glittering. "I am still simply dying to hear the full story. How did you find yourself in my carriage? I trust you were comfortable before your accident." This was it. The moment. Clara could feel Arthur's leg brush hers beneath the table, a silent signal of support. She took a sip of water, placing the crystal glass down with a steady hand. She then turned her head and met Vance's gaze, her own clear and cold as a winter morning. "It was a simple mistake, Lord Vance," Clara replied, her voice, though quiet, carrying across the silent table. "It was, as I am sure you recall, a very dark and stormy night. One's judgment can be clouded by the company one is forced to keep." She paused, letting the words land, before delivering the final, devastating blow. "I mistook the carriage for that of a gentleman." She held his gaze for one more heartbeat, then turned to her husband with a small, brilliant smile. "A mistake," she added, her voice now light. "I will not be making again." A woman at the far end of the table gasped, then disguised it as a cough. Lord Barrows choked on his wine. Vance's face turned a shade of purple that was truly alarming. The battle was not just won. It was a rout. Arthur placed his hand over Clara's on the table, his thumb stroking the new gold band on her finger. The war, for all intents and purposes, was over. In the weeks that followed, the full, crushing weight of the Ashworth name and its formidable legal team descended upon Lord Vance. It was not a gentle legal inquiry. It was an invasion. Clara, now a duchess with the backing of one of the most powerful men in England, was no longer a terrified lone woman. She was an accuser. Her testimony, given to Arthur's solicitors, was precise, damning, and ironclad. Mr. Dryden, the London solicitor, produced the authenticated will, which had been safely in his possession, postmarked the day before Clara's flight. Then, the servants at Rutherford Hall, now free from Vance's tyranny and emboldened by his public humiliation, began to talk. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Finch, tearfully confessed that Lord Vance had ordered her to lock Lady Agatha in her rooms and to deny her access to her personal physician, instead bringing in a specialist from London, a man who, it was discovered, was a disgraced debtor of Vance's. An inquest was opened. Faced with the combined power of the Ashworth title, a mountain of damning evidence, and a near-certain charge of murder, Harrison Vance did the one thing he was good at. He ran. He fled in the dead of night, with a single suitcase and his pockets empty, leaving his entailed estates to be torn apart like a carcass by his legion of creditors. He was never seen in England again. Rutherford Hall was sold at auction, and its name was struck from the lists of polite society. 6 months later, the London season was in full, glittering swing. The grand ballroom at Devonshire House was a crush of diamonds, silks, and stifling perfume. And the absolute, undeniable, and reluctant centre of attention was the new, scandalous Duchess of Ashworth. "They are still whispering," Clara noted, her voice full of amusement as she fanned herself. She stood with her husband near the terrace, a small, quiet island in the churning sea of the Ton. "Let them whisper," Arthur said, his hand resting on the small of her back, a possessive, casual gesture that was, in itself, a topic of much discussion. "They are simply astounded that a man like me, a stone-cold recluse, I believe was the Morning Post's description, could have found a prize like you before their simpering daughters could." He had changed. The transformation was profound. The harsh, unforgiving lines of his face had softened, warmed by a life that now contained laughter. He smiled, a frequent, genuine expression that was, as Clara often teased him, reserved only for her. His vow, once a shield of stone, had been replaced by a devotion that was more potent than any armor. "I saw the Countess of Lytton staring at your necklace," Arthur murmured, his lips near her ear, sending a pleasant shiver down her spine. She was positively green. A good color on her, I suppose, but not as good as it is on you. Clara touched the magnificent diamond and emerald necklace at her throat, the one she had worn as armor to Rutherford Hall. "It is still a bit much, Arthur. It belonged to your mother. And now it belongs to my wife," he said simply. "Though, I was thinking we should visit Garrod's tomorrow, the Crown Jewelers." "What for?" She laughed. "You have already given me half the contents of the Ashworth vault." "The Ashworth emeralds are one thing," he said, his expression turning serious, though his eyes were warm. "But I should like to commission a new set. The Clara diamonds, perhaps. A new legacy. Our legacy." She felt her heart swell. "Arthur." He guided her through the French doors onto the cool, quiet terrace, away from the prying eyes. The music of the orchestra was a muted, romantic swell behind them. "Celebrate what?" she had asked him earlier. "We are celebrating this," he said, turning her to face him, the moonlight catching the fire in her hair. "The fact that I am the luckiest, and was once the most foolish, man in England." He took her gloved hands in his. "I am so glad I found you in that carriage, Clara. That night I was a man of shadows. I thought you were just another part of his darkness, his world. An enemy to be managed, a pawn in his game." He raised one of his hands to touch her cheek, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "But you weren't. You were the light I didn't even know I was seeking. You were mine. From the very beginning, even when I was too blind and too broken to see it." "I am yours, Arthur," she whispered, leaning into his touch, her heart overflowing. "And you are mine." She smiled, a small, teasing smile. "And I do not think, for a single moment, that you are impossible to love." The Duke, who had vowed never to love again, who had believed himself a man of stone, looked at his wife, his brilliant, courageous, beautiful wife. He had found her in the wreckage of his enemy's life, and in doing so, he had saved and remade his own. He lowered his head and kissed her, a deep, promising kiss, right there on the terrace, in full view of the whispering Ton. And for the first time in his entire life, Arthur St. John, the 6th Duke of Ashworth, did not care who was watching. And so, the Duke, who had locked his heart away in a prison of his own making, found the key in the most unexpected place. The vow was broken, but a new one was forged in its place. Not one of stone, but one of strength, partnership, and a love that was stronger than any betrayal. What did you think of Arthur and Clara's story? Did you predict the incredible twist about Lord Vance and Arthur's first wife? For me, the most powerful moment was when Clara burned that portrait. Let me know your favorite part in the comments below. If you love stories of redemption, drama, and romance against all odds, please show your support. It means the world to us. Don't forget to like this video, share it with a fellow romance lover, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. You won't want to miss the next drama we have in store. Thank you for listening.